You there, Kip?
Where else would I be?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't
I'm
know what
just
you.
shocked you brought me in this early. That's all.
No, hey, listen, I actually designed it. I made sure it was 10. All right. I know it gets early because we're sports people. We're up late at 9 o'clock, 8:30. These are not our times. Every single time I wake up, every time my alarm goes off, it's just trauma. All I'm thinking about for my first 15 minutes of my day is, God, I can't wait to go to sleep later tonight. That's going to be so great to get back into bed later. Oh, can't wait. Yeah, I'm watching the show. By the way, Willie gave you guys a lot. He was really bought in. He was like, $12 million, and he went, I'm excited. I'm going to tell these guys the ins and outs of how this thing
Oh no,
materialized.
he's smart guy,
Oh
man. He
yeah.
just doesn't give you anything away
I don't
like
know. Yeah, I
that
don't know
that
why.
that the media can run with.
But if you're him, it's like you already got the money. It's done. You're here. Just say some stuff. Tell people what it means to you. And it's like, no, all right. You even gave him, you had the one in that nobody else had where you're like, man, I know your dad. I played with your dad. I've been roommates with your dad. And he was like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
he's like, guess what, Kip? Lots of guys have.
Yeah.
So,
I don't blame him.
yeah,
I don't blame him. In today's world where few things can get twisted and turned,
hmm
better to play safe. And
sure.
that's his philosophy, and it's worked for him so far.
I mean, you could say that you've had a million things twisted and turned on you, and it's worked out for you, though, too. So, goes cuts both ways, buddy.
Yeah.
But you made this. I'm watching the show, and I'm waiting. I'm listening to you and Elliot kind of talk about the contracts. I want to hear what you have to say about this because you were the guy that was on it first, right? And I'm just like, hey, I got to hear what Kypreos has to say about all this. Like the number went even further north, right, than what you had
Yeah.
originally kind of stated. And I keep going, okay, it's lockout proof. It's front loaded. It's 13% of the cap. He somehow made his comparable David Pastrnak, despite Pasta having a 60-goal season last year on the best team in hockey. He got a no movement clause all the way through, which not even David Pastrnak got. Pastrnak, by the way, I think he outscored his next closest teammate last year by more than 40 points. That's something I think is true, but I need to double check it. And yet Nylander still, despite being like a guy who is not proven throughout his entire career as like a line driver, he ends up being like, nope, this is the comparable. This is the money. We want it all. We want it all. And I couldn't wait to hear a couple things from you. And you nailed something with me, which is you talked about the ad money, right? Because my big question was, why were the Leafs not able to parlay winning culture, public perception, front-loaded money, ad revenue, and lifestyle? Because I think that these guys like being famous here. I do. I think that that's a plus for them. Why were they not able to parlay any of those things into a slightly lower cap figure for William Nylander? And you touched on some stuff with the ad money, and I'm just going to start there. It's way less than we all have in our minds.
Oh, 100%. And there's the feeling that for whatever reason that NHL players, the stars, they should be more aligned with the baseball and the basketball, and we should be making 20 and 30 million dollars, and these guys are getting tens of millions of dollars
hmm
in endorsement fees, and they're not here. They're not. And these guys know that the best of the best come out of Toronto, and it's even not that great. And we're talking about for anywhere from 50,000 to 250,000, but there are no millions.
Hmm.
And yes, you could you could accumulate $1 million worth of endorsements, but you got to work your ass off for them too. And these companies aren't stupid. They're not going to just throw you money for a picture and the use of your name. They're going to want you to uh, make appearances or uh, put commercials together that sometimes could take 2 or 3 days. I'm watching that the betting app endorse being endorsed by Chris Pronger, Mitch Marner,
That's gone for those
and
guys soon too.
Leon Draisaitl. And yes, it'll be gone soon. But do you think they all went to Muskoka and wrapped everything up in about 15, 20 minutes? Like
hmm
those things, it's a lot,
hmm
and you got to work for it. And sometimes guys will go, "Hey, if I'm making 11, like I don't know, will we see Willie now in a bunch of commercials here moving forward, or is he going to sit there and go, make 11 and a half? What's what's 150 grand going to do Canadian for me if I got to pay taxes on it and give an agent fee, and uh, it's not worth it. So this is them maxing out in one of the most expensive cities in North America, and they're not settling for less in a lot of different ways, especially when you compare what other players are paying taxes in Florida and Carolina. I told Justin the other day, Sebastian Aho's
Yeah.
under $10 million. His take home money's better than Willie Nylander's at 11.5.
Yeah. If you're 9.5 in Florida, you're making more than Nylander here at 11.5.
Yeah, and the players know that.
Yeah.
They're educated now. There's terrific companies. There's a great website, Gavin Management. Ex NHL player Stu Gavin and Matt Bakioki are from Gavin Management. Go and plug and play the
hmm
tax rates when you put different teams in on different salaries. It's fascinating, and I tell you, it's one of the most popular websites
hmm
for NHL players.
Yeah. I love that. I just love picturing them go not to an accountant or not to
No,
their
a
financial
website.
guy, just going to the website and blindly trusting it. That's 2023. But okay, so much of this conversation, Kip, and the reason why I want to start here is because it's we need to kind of refocus the way that we look at some of these things. I think as media, as fans, as commentators of the game, right? Is to me, it's like for you, like look at your career as a perfect example of this, right? Is you playing here, you being a Maple Leaf, that meant more because you could parlay that into a post career, right? You could go, hey, you know what? And I'm sure maybe you weren't thinking about this as it was happening, but you're like, yeah, I can be on Hockey Night in Canada because more people know who I am because I'm playing in Toronto. You could open up a restaurant post-career. You could be a Leafs alumni. You could be doing, getting real checks from Scotiabank like some guys are now, right? Where you go, hey, I show up at the Scotiabank events and I get paid a nice sum of money to be a Leafs alumni that's at these events. And that wasn't going to be the way for some of these other places because the taxes always existed, right? Like, yes, they change. Yes, they get more egregious in some places. Like, I liked that you pointed that out to Bourne yesterday that like tax codes change all the time. He was like, wow, good to know. I was like, he's like, he had to teach him something super useful. But those advantages like weather, right? Those have always existed in some places. Taxes have existed in some places. Media pressure, like these are things that have always been that way. But a big part of, hey, you're going to be a Toronto Maple Leaf, you're going to get the ad money, and you're also going to be able to parlay this potentially into either media or into businesses that come after hockey. You're going to have more opportunity after hockey is done. And now it just seems like for the stars anyways, the guys who make the top tier money, that's actually not a conversation at all. Like that's gone. That's not a competitive advantage for Toronto anymore.
No, you're right. Not when you're wrapping up your career with career earnings of 150 million dollars. So I don't think they're worried about uh, doing TV with Elliot Friedman anytime soon.
Well, but even if
but
the ad money's not there, it's like that's not even anything either. Like if you're talking like what do you think like if you just had to guess, like let's just say this right now, nobody aggregate this, but if we're trying to guess what you think a Matthews or Nylander does the most commercials, right?
uh,
I think he does.
I think Mitch has 2 or 3 major endorsements
But
as
let's
well.
just lump them kind of all into
Yeah,
one group. Those three
yeah,
main guys. What do you
yeah.
think each of their take home is off of ads every year?
I probably think that they're raking in another extra 500 grand.
That's what I mean. Like that's a
If
shockingly low
yeah,
number. If you went around fans and you said how much these guys make a year in endorsements, they'd be like, "Oh yeah, 10 million, 7 million,
no,
5
no, no.
million."
That's
It would be
that's
somewhere in there.
that's for the basketball players in the U.S. When their corporations sign them, th- they understand their reach is around 350 million people.
hmm
When RBC signs Matthews, it's the reach is across 35 million people across the country, and they also factor in the fact that Matthews isn't that popular in British Columbia, and
hmm
he's not that like they the Vancouver Canucks for the most part hate anything about the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, it's regional.
Jamming Matthews in BC isn't exactly gonna excite RBC to think that hundreds of thousands of hockey fans are going to go join up an RBC account because Austin Matthews told him to. So, it's limited. It's really limited, but so is the pay scale because of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that removes ads and post-playing career, right? Like, or at least revenue off a post-playing career, because we're looking at this through that lens, right? I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, but let's not forget, JD, that there's 80% of the roster that do think of it, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree.
and
I'm just
that's
saying with
where
these guys, it doesn't matter. And they're the ones
No.
that get the majority of the commercials, man. Like, I remember Connor Brown had commercials when he was here for, like, Sports Check. And now I'm thinking, what was he even making off of those? So I'm sure there are other guys that want those endorsements that are further down the roster, and they're trying to consider that. But I'm saying for these guys, when we're talking about trying to get the haircuts, the ad money of Toronto, the thing that we have been told this entire time, that this was like a real selling point to this city, is actually not part of it. Because I'm trying to figure out why the Leafs gave everything to Nylander and why they've continued to give everything to these guys, despite what are supposed to be their advantages, right? Like, again, I get it in Florida when they go, oh, a guy wanted to play here. I go, okay, because weather, because taxes, and because of lack of pressure. But with Toronto, it was always supposed to be ads, lifestyle, fame. Here, it's supposed to be team building right now, like the actual opportunity to win, and then legacy. Yeah. And the fact that they get the front-loaded money here, that Toronto can just say, hey, like they made this Nylander contract completely lockout-proof. Like you guys pointed out yesterday, all the money's up front. They get this thing out. Nylander's laughing. He doesn't care. He's like, take your time, fellas. I'll be in Sweden. Call me when there's hockey. I want to know why they haven't been able to parlay any of the other stuff into lower cap numbers. Like why they haven't been able to take the lifestyle, the comfortability of not having to move somewhere, the team building aspect, the legacy aspect, and the fact that these guys get to be famous and that they get to be rock stars here versus other places. Why that hasn't been able, and the front-loaded money, why that hasn't materialized in any kind of, I hate using discount, but lower fee. Let's put it that way, lower fee. Yeah.
They just don't have it prioritized any higher than the AAV. And they don't value those things as much as squeezing the number as high as they can. And this is something that unfortunately started a while ago. And, for an example, when we first started talking about Nylander being north of 11, everybody just went to the Pasternak deal. And there's still people sitting there going, Willie's not as good as Pasternak.
Because he's not.
Doesn't deserve it, right? Doesn't deserve it. So Pasternak could not even get a complete no move out of the Boston Bruins.
That's what I mean.
And Willie did. Why? Because the comparison is not Pasternak. The comparison is Matthews, Tavares, and Marner. That's the comparison. And how can you, in good conscience, tell me that I have a limited no move when they have a complete no move? And the Leafs go, you're right. And that's, as they say, the horse is out of the barn, JD. That's what set up Willie Nylander's deal, not Pasternak, not anything else.
You know what I would have said to that? I would have said Austin Matthews has 329 career goals, and you have 198.
Okay. All right. Hold on.
No, I'm just saying.
That's, okay. And you know what that conversation starts?
Yeah, he's mad.
No, not that. No, that you don't value me anywhere near him, and I don't want to be here if you don't, because I can go somewhere else that can that can appreciate me a lot more. And the Leafs weren't willing to go down that path. That's why the deal's done today, and it's not done June 30th or July 1st, because they don't want to mess around with him. He is irreplaceable.
Sure.
For the Toronto Maple Leafs. And that's why they paid what they paid, because it's one thing to tell him he's not as good as Matthews, and it's another one to even try to replace him. And they're not doing it. There's no one else out there that can do what he can do.
No question.
And do it in a market like this one. Like, we've had players in the past that have buckled to the pressure. Good players, talented players that just feel like this market's not for me. At least he's proven that he can thrive in this market.
Yeah. I would just say that unless you really thought Chicago was a uber credible threat, that they were going to come over the top with this, because the most they could offer them was 7 years. And I don't think that Chicago was going to give William Nylander $13 million a season. Like, I just don't think that that's a real thing. But unless there's some truth to the idea that he and Pettersson could have pushed their way to Chicago and both gotten that 7 years top end money, I still don't understand that if you're going to give a lockout proof contract that's front loaded, that's 13% of your cap, that is giving you a full no move clause, that you're getting, all that front loaded money, and you're getting it in the middle of the season as you're at your peak value, why the Leafs would have just decided, you know what, screw it, we are better off waiting, because I don't get the whole, like, what's their upside in this other than going into the deadline and feeling like they're moving on from the story, but they're not, because all it does is make a bigger examination of what's going to happen with Marner.
Listen, I can't pick holes in really anything you're saying, other than the fact that they did not want to risk him leaving.
Mm-hmm.
And it really just comes down to that. If you want to talk about moving forward, you want to talk about not having something hang over the team's head, you want to talk about distractions, all of it. They've never really held any of these guys' feet to the fire,
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't starting with Willie Nylander after all these years. And they're in bed with these guys. They're going to live and die by these core four for this season and most probably next season. And hey, roll the dice. That's what you're essentially doing. But so is every other team in the league, right? When you think about it, no different than Dubas with
Mm-hmm.
Malkin, and not that it's on Dubas, but the organization rolled the dice with Malkin, Letang, and Crosby again this year. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not everybody's got to do it. Everybody's got decisions to make. The Leafs clearly made theirs.
Okay, so if that is the decision, though, and the one thing that we can learn from all of this is, hey, the earlier you get it done, the better, because these guys are always looking at the cap percentage of one another and saying that's the number. And so hit it earlier. So I feel like there's no real stake to this postseason other than, the actual fan stake of winning and losing. But when it comes to like real roster changes, okay, maybe Sheldon Keefe's job is on the line. I don't know. Because now it would just make the most sense for them to just say, hey, let's get this Marner thing done immediately. That July 1st, he's getting 13% of the cap or 13.1% of the cap. And this thing is that's a done deal. Do it now.
Yeah, I don't think it's as easy as that.
What's going to complicate it?
What's complicated is that you've had 6 years to prove that these guys can lead you to a championship, and they've proved every year that they can't.
Yeah.
And I think it would not. Put it this way. A first round exit in the playoffs this year, how would that go over knowing that you have Willie, Matthews, and Marner for the next 4 years?
I think it
5
would go over
years?
just like it always has, though, where it's like they lost to Montreal and everyone was like, all right, something's got to change. It was like, no.
Yeah.
It-
Yeah, no, I don't think it's that easy. I don't. I think it'll be, and we're kind of excluding Tavares because at the end of next year,
Yeah.
even if he comes back, it's going to be a retirement contract for
Yeah.
the most part. So, but even these three will be questioned moving forward long term. And if Marner turns around and can help lead this team to a conference final or Stanley Cup final, then yeah, all day long. And then they're going to have a tough decision on how high they want to go with Marner. But
Yeah.
The good news is they don't have to worry about it right now.
Sure.
They can plant the seed that, hey, Mitch, if you want to stay here and finish your career, you're gonna maybe have to take pretty much what you're making now or slightly above it. Like if they want to go down that path, that's an option. But that'd be crazy for Mitch Marner with so much upside still to take another crack at putting himself probably in the similar situation as past or as Draisaitl
Uh-huh.
to say, how high can I get? And while I share the spotlight with Nylander and Matthews here, Do I envision being a leader somewhere else on the
Mm.
back half of my career, making 14 or 15 million if the cap gets to where we think it can get to? That's an option for Mitch as well. So there's there's no real reason to be pressed into any decisions from the Marner camp or for the Leaf camp until you see how this season plays out.
Yeah, I get that. I have trouble seeing what really changes. Like, okay, let's play it out where the Leafs fail, right? Because you outlined the scenario where they have success and then they want to retain him. They make a conference final, they make a Stanley Cup, they win a Stanley Cup. It's like, okay, it's obvious. You're giving Mitch Marner his 13% of the cap. You're trying to get that thing done as soon as possible. Maybe it's even a little bit more than that, whatever. You've proven, you now have proof of concept with your model, and you're not trying to rock the boat on any of this. But the other way, like you mentioned, if it's a first round exit, I don't get what the, okay, so you go into the offseason and you're saying we're shopping Mitch Marner. But what happened this year? They like William Nylander, you could have made a call. Somebody could have made a call, and the Leafs were never going to be able to get commensurate value or anything close to it. So it's like, why would they get commensurate value for Mitch Marner? Not to mention, he's got his no move clause, and you're looking at it, it's the exact same argument as before. Like, he's got you over the barrel the exact same way with Nylander. Like, I don't see what the differentiator is between the two in terms of Toronto's ability to move off of him.
Well, the difference maker in all of this is the fact that you're not going to spend 12 to 13 million dollars on another forward. You're going to put it on your back end. You may even go and get a goaltender. There's just so many ways that you can spread that salary around in your lineup, and give into the fact that spending over $40 million the last 5 years on forwards just wasn't the right recipe. And it's a little different because you wouldn't think about replacing Mitch Marner with another Mitch Marner. You would think about spreading it around the infield here and balancing your lineup a lot more.
But
And
you think you could trade him? Like, you think you could actually, like, that would be the real thing, is that he would have real value in the
oh,
offseason, and
listen,
like he would want
I
out, you would agree, like, hey, we're doing this thing.
getting Mitch Marner at 10.9 before he jumps to
Mm-hmm.
14 or 15 would definitely be of interest. It would be uh, a sign and trade. That's what it would be. There's no way a team would trade for Mitch Marner and give the Leafs, enough value uh, until he is locked into that team long term. Then you're talking about significant assets for Mitch Marner, but uh, till commits to a long-term deal, you're talking about a rental.
Yeah.
And no matter how good these guys are rentals, and they're usually a first round and a blue chip prospect and not that much more. If I'm only getting them for 12 months, how much do you want? How much do you think I need to pay for that? And there's a going rate for that. So many dynamics here moving forward, but the most important one is the time that you have to assess the situation and
Mm-hmm.
see how this thing again looks by the end of the year.
Yeah, I keep thinking of just like his no move clause, and the idea of like you go into the offseason and he says, yeah, I'm not moving it for there. I'm not going to re-sign with there. And then all of a sudden you've got limited trade partners. And what are you getting
Well,
back?
that is another conversation
Yeah.
for sure, JD, and it's not helping the Leafs at all that
No.
they gave away all these no moves. And yeah, uh, Mitch could be a prick and say, "Listen, as miserable as it will be next year,
Yep.
and how much you've made it abundantly clear that I'm not your guy moving forward.
I'm not just going to go to Columbus.
I'm not moving.
Yeah.
I'm not moving."
Yeah.
So uh, he's in a position where they're all in a position, and Willie's in a position 4 or 5 years from now
Mm-hmm.
where he can call his shots as well. It's not ideal. Much rather be the Boston Bruins with Pasternak 5 years from now, where you've got
The ability to move them.
10, 15 teams that you
Yeah.
can move them,
Yeah. That's
right?
nice. That's a good
And
thing to have.
it's a good thing to have. And so many teams will be in play to be traded to
Yeah.
because they won't care about an AAV because they're not a max cap team.
Yeah.
So that will come into play for a lot of teams moving contracts out because the base salaries and real money owed will be very favorable for any team that picks up these type of players, but not with no moves. So
Yeah.
Mitch can sit there and say, I know I only got another year left, but I'm going to do it in Toronto.
I got to say, out of all of this, even the term, even all the stuff, like the front-loaded money, all that stuff, like nothing actually has sat with me longer and made me more annoyed than the no-move clauses. Just because, they're. You guys pointed out, everybody knows it, that the actual salaries of these deals down the line are not going to be that consequential. But then all of a sudden, you lose that advantage if the player, like you said, decides to be a prick and goes, I don't want to go there. So never mind it. Never mind my ability to go there. Okay, actual team stuff.
Hold on, just one last thought on that. Okay, I've always stated that even though they have the no moves, there's ways around them.
Oh, for sure.
But you have to drop the gloves, and it has to get ugly.
That's what I mean.
And that's the only unfortunate part.
Yeah, I don't feel like they've shown that they're going to be willing to do that. I heard a little bit. I've had a conversation that the Leafs goaltender this weekend, there might not be a Dennis Hill to be signing. That there's a chance it's Samsonov. You think that Samsonov could be back this weekend?
Well, there's no question that they've not they haven't given up hope.
But could it happen that fast?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah,
let's just say that. I mean, I was very surprised that he wouldn't get a game or two in with the Marlies, and to this day I just don't think that there's any way that you can replicate practice with an actual game. So if they truly believe that the assessment that they've made is this guy is just needed a mental break and everything's fine, then good on them. Then bring him up. But if there's an aspect of his game where he's still swimming a little bit too much on one side or the other, and you look into the mask and see a face that is lost and confused, then it was the wrong decision. But if they want to find out as early as this next week, then go for it.
Yeah, I got to tell you, if there's no perfect solution here, right? Like you're running Jones in the ground. He's playing great, but they should probably be a little bit more cautious with him, but whatever. I think we probably baby these guys a bit too much in the load management era, especially here post Kawhi and all this different stuff, right? Like Eddie Belfour 100 years ago was able to play like 73 games. Guys used to play hockey a lot, and they survived it. And that's without the modern sports sciences today. So I'm not like afraid Martin Jones is going to get hurt because he's playing too much hockey. But yeah, you'd like to keep him fresh. You'd like to keep him playing well. That is the way
it's not that you're worried about him being hurt.
Yeah.
It's just, do you believe that this guy can really help you win a Stanley Cup? And they're not convinced.
No, I just mean right now, like getting through this gap, because it doesn't, it looks pretty clear that you're not getting Wool back until after the All-Star game. And so you got to get through another month. And what goaltender is going to be there? We thought at least, all right, just give Hill to be a spot start here. I just think the optics of if they bring Samsonov back this weekend to play that Detroit game, who's like pretty close to Toronto in the standings, there's a scenario here where Toronto can cause some gap or create some gap between them and Detroit. But there's a scenario where they end up in that game on a back-to-back, and Detroit, is closing it to a couple of points, a point or two. I think they're up 3 points with a couple games in hand as of right now. And if you throw Samsonov in that game and he gets shelled and you lose and they get 2 points on you, that's just going to be a tough look for everybody involved.
I don't think there's a game that you can put him in that doesn't potentially have a tough look.
Sure.
Moving forward. So pick your poison and go for it.
Mm-hmm.
So if this is the way they feel, that this guy has straightened his head out, and it was nothing technical about his game, then it doesn't matter where you throw him in, JD. Just do it, and let's see what happens.
Last one. It's not about the Leafs. I don't know a time with hockey Twitter where I've had as much fun as Cutter Gauthier last night.
Yeah, this one kind of snuck up on everybody.
Everyone.
And, good for, I guess, the Flyers or Anaheim to kind of keep it hush hush. That usually this stuff gets out, and I don't know. It sets it up. I hope this Cutter player turns out to be a hell of a hockey player. So
I'm the opposite.
So he can go into Philly, once or twice a year and we can watch with great interest
Oh, dude.
because they're very offended.
They didn't hold
Very.
back. It was amazing. Scotty Hartnell buries him, right? Keith Jones, incredible. You don't want to be a Flyer. We don't want you. Tortorella, I don't know you from a hole in the wall. It was just keep rolling the hits. And normally I always feel like the internet is too much of a pile-on, and I thought that someone would go, he's just a kid, and no one did that. No one was like, stop, slow down.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a reason. Everyone was like, no.
Well, listen, this is where it was so important that the Flyers have turned a corner and are on the upside and playing such great hockey. If this was last year, then everybody would be saying, what's wrong with Philadelphia?
Yeah.
Why doesn't anybody want to go? What happened to this organization? No, they stink. No one wants to go there. Everything would have been on the Flyers. Now with their great play, everything's on this kid, which is kind of fun to watch.
I love it. It was, dude, there's theories floating out there. Like he's on some podcasts, right? And there's little video clips. We have some of them. But there's a theory that it was Kevin Hayes that got to him, that he was his mentor and that he hated Tortorella, so he got in his ear. And then Hayes, he disputes that. He goes publicly, calls the guy that reported it a clown. But then the internet deep dives that it's like, yeah, their relationship is actually, they had one. And you're like, all right, it's a disgruntled guy. Then there's these weird things of Cutter Gauthier just loves Sidney Crosby. He loves the Penguins. And even after he was drafted by Philly, he wouldn't shut up about how much he loved the Penguins in every single interview that he did. I've seen you, Kipper. Like, when you're in the newsroom, you're working the phones. You're grinding on the phones. You're just on it.
Hey, do you think I want to talk to Sammy all day?
Dude, it's a nightmare.
I fake calls to avoid talking to those guys.
I know, that's what I mean. It's great. Yeah, you go over to the little
I'm just kidding.
The putter and the little, the little machine, you go putt, you just talk on the phone. But what have you heard about like the theory? What's your theory on this? Like, why did he want out? Because right now I'm fully in the conspiracy hole of, yep, all right. Hayes told him that he hates Tortorella and that Philly sucks. And then he went, okay. And then he also he loves the Penguins so much he didn't want to play against the Penguins. And that's it. That's like to not meet with the team and to not tell them what's going on. Yeah. What do you think it is?
Well, listen, you're going to see me probably coming to the office around 1 o'clock and start making phone
make
calls.
The calls. It's not, so you haven't put in the calls yet?
I have not put in any calls on this at all. But I will tell you this, that word of mouth is a very big factor in the world I've been living in the last 30 or 40 years in pro hockey. Everybody talks. And there are times when, yes, people can be swayed and people can be at times manipulated, and it's very real. I don't know about this particular situation, but it wouldn't be the first time somebody said something to someone and something got derailed. So
unreal.
I think if you connect the dots, it's leaning towards what you just said.
Yeah. Yeah, I like connecting the dots. That's a fun thing. That's the only good thing with Twitter is when something like this happens and you get, because Twitter is just brutal and I go, why do I do this to myself? And then a Cutter Gauthier thing happens and I'm like, Twitter's the best. This is the best thing that you could ever. What a great invention that we had. This has made us all better as a society. Hey man, I'll be listening to the show later today. I can't wait after you've made the calls, what we end up getting today.
All right, pal. Have a good one.
See you, brother.